So, I had a full-blown mediumship experience, and I'm gonna go into everything that happened. So, yes, I saw dead people, and I had full-blown conversations, and I could ask whatever I wanted. So, I'm sleeping, and I hear a voice, and it's going, "Hey, hey, 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 hey," over and over and over and over in my ear. Okay? In my fucking ear. In my left ear, then it's in my right ear, then it's in my left ear. It's like they're jumping back and forth going, "Hey, hey, hey, hey." And they would not stop. Now, I'm like half awake, half asleep. I'm like, whoever this is will stop when they realize I'm busy. And I was like, they wouldn't stop. And I'm here, I'm thinking, oh, it's gotta be my mom trying to wake me up or something. Hey, hey, hey. So I'm like, fuck, finally, I'll fucking get up. I screamed that. I'm like, finally, I'll fucking get up. What do you want? And I get up out of the bed, and I look around, and I realize that there's nobody there. So I'm like, huh, okay. All right. So now I'm like trying to like dissect it, but I'm like, I heard voices. Like I heard a voice. Like that was a human voice. So I'm like dissecting it, and I'm like, okay, 100% already know that this is a spirit. I know it's a spirit. I'm like, I'm 100% certain this is a spirit. There's no way it's anything but. And I was like walking around, and I was just thinking, and I would say about 5 minutes later, I get a phone call from Elle. And literally 5 minutes later, like I'm dissecting it. I'm like, what the hell's going on? I'm still like trying to figure out, and I get a phone call from Elle, which again, we're linked. So that was like a sign again that what I experienced is fucking, real. So I'm having a phone call with Elle, and we're talking, whatever, and she's streaming, and we have a conversation, whatever, and I mentioned on her stream that I heard a voice. And we're talking, whatever, and then I hang up with her, and then she calls me back for a second, and then I hang up with her, and I'm like, I'm looking around, and I'm just like, this is so weird. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. Like, that has to mean something. And so every night I've been manifesting the ability to sort of speak to the dead, mediumship abilities, and I've even been asking for clairaudience. So that is clairaudience, when you can actually physically hear a spirit, or your guides talking to you, when you can hear it in like a physical form. That's clairaudience. So I have been manifesting clairaudience. So I was like, okay, definitely got what I've been asking for. And I was like, thank you. I was like, but who was that, and what did it mean? You know what's crazy? I wasn't going to call you, and I was like, I really feel like I should call Aunt. Yeah, literally, it's because we're connected, and that's like what solidified that, like, it was like, this is happening. And so I was like, okay. So I'm like, I was watching Elle for a while, and I was doing a few things, and I was like, I don't know, I feel like I need to meditate. I was like, I need to meditate. Like, I need to meditate. I need to. So I get in the bed, and I'm meditating, and I'm like, you know what? I'm really tired still. I was like, I wouldn't be surprised if I fall asleep again. So I'm meditating, and I'm like seeing, in what I do in my meditation, I'm like, seeing whatever that I normally see, and all of a sudden I like fall asleep. But I'm not asleep. I'm very much aware of where I am and what's going on, and I'm in my same room. So I'm like, is this a dream? And I hear a voice go, no, it's not a dream. And I was like, what is that? And I look, and I sit up, and I look on my bed, and there's a little girl. And this little girl is coloring. And she's coloring. And I was like, huh? And she's like, hi. And I was like, what are you doing? And she's like, I'm coloring. And I was like, are you the one that woke me? And she's like, uh-huh. And I was like, why? And she goes, I was bored. And I was like, are you dead? And she goes, uh-huh. And I was like, is this like mediumship? And she goes, yeah. And I'm like, okay. Now, mind you, this girl has got to be like 4 to 6 years old. She's got short hair. It's kind of light colored, a little bit orangey kind of looking, but not really. Like, it's just very light colored because she's so young. And she's just sitting there, and I was like, okay. I was like, and she confirmed that she was dead, and I was like, what's your name? And she's like, Kelly. I was like, Kelly? She's like, mm-hmm. Now, it was hard to hear her because she talked very, very quickly. And it was hard for me to, like, remember everything in terms of, like, specifics. So maybe it sounded like Kelly, I think it was Kelly. And I go, well, what's your last name? And she goes, oh, my last name is, and then she told me her last name, and I cannot remember it because I go, wait. I need to take notes. I was like, can I take notes? She's like, yeah. I was like, but if I take notes, is it going to show in the real world? And she's like, and she's laughing at me. I'm like, but is it? She's like, yeah, it will. And I was like, okay, which clearly it's not going to. So I take out my phone and I open up the notepad and I'm taking notes. So I was like, okay, how do you spell your name? And it was a very long name and it had like a J in it. It was like a very like complex name. So I wrote down her last name. Kelly something, whatever. And I was like, well, how did you die? And she's like, I choked. And I was like, what? And she's like pointing to her throat. She's like, I choked. And then like she showed me almost like her like eating popcorn and choking. And I was like, okay. All right. And she was like, yeah. She's like, me and mommy used to watch TV all the time. We used to watch TV all the time. I was like, oh, you and mommy? She's like, yeah, me and mommy did a lot together. And I was like, okay. She was like, yeah, I miss mommy. I miss watching ABC Family with mommy. I was like, what? I was like, what is this, a promo for a TV show? But she's like, yeah, we used to watch it every night. We used to watch TV every night together. And I was like, okay. And I was like, well, how can we find you? And she goes, well, I had a social media. I was like, what? And like I saw like these flashes of social media profiles, and she was like, yeah, my name was, and I can't remember the exact name, but it was like either Butterfly something or Firefly something. It was like Butterfly or Firefly, and like numbers after it. And I was like, okay. She's like, yeah, that was my thing. That was my username. And I was like, okay. She's like, yeah. So I don't know if that meant like maybe there's like something on the internet about her. Maybe there's like a social media link. I don't know, because this girl was like 4 to 6 years old, maybe a little bit older, like around there. Like she was very young. And so it's like, do you like to draw? And she's like, yeah, it's my favorite. I love drawing. So she's just like drawing. And she's like, yeah, I just wanted somebody to play with me. And I was like, okay. I was like, are there other people here? She's like, yeah. I was like, really? Where are you? I was like, really? Where are they? She's like, oh, they're in the other room. So I was like, do you mind if I go look and see who else is here? She's like, go ahead. And I was like, am I going to be able to see you again? She's like, mm-hmm. I was like, okay. She just continued to color. So I walk out and I walk into what is like my living room. Okay. And I'm like, this place is empty. And then in the corner of the room, I see my dad. And I went, oh, well, that makes sense. And he goes, hey, what's up? And I was like, is this real? He's like, yeah. And I was like, So like it's like your spirit, right? And he's like, mm-hmm. And I was like, okay. I was like, so this is, again, I asked the same question. I'm like, so this is like full-blown mediumship, right? He's like, yep, it's about time. And I was like, okay. And so I was like, well, what the fuck are you doing here? I was like, you're all by yourself. What the fuck are you doing here? He's like, well, I'm not by myself. He's like, you're just, obviously, you're the only one I'm the only one you see right now. And he's like, I was like, well, what do you do? Like, what's your favorite thing to do? And he goes, well, I like to eat. And if you know my dad loved to eat. And I was like, okay. I was like, well, how do you eat? He's like, I'll show you. So he points to my kitchen. And out of my kitchen comes my mom. And I turned to him, I go, wait a minute. That doesn't make any sense. I was like, Mom's not dead. I was like, I thought these are spirits. I thought this was mediumship. He's like, it is. I was like, but Mom's right there. He's like, that's not Mom. I was like, then what is that? And he goes, it's a freeze. I said, what? He goes, it's a freeze. I was like, what the hell's a freeze? He's like, a freeze is almost like a mirage. We can kind of create what we want. And I was like, okay. He's like, go over and try and talk to her. So I went to try and talk to her, but she didn't even see me or hear me. He's like, it's a freeze. That's how they act. He's like, I could do whatever I want. So my mom, quote unquote, the freeze, was taking like food or whatever, making food and just giving it to him. And he was just like eating the food that she was giving him. And I was like, okay. He's like, yeah, I'll show you. He's like, if I want to listen to music, I just make another freeze. And he goes like this and he makes a freeze. And it's like, my dad loved Janis Joplin, but I don't know if it was Janis Joplin, like a freeze of Janis Joplin, or if it was just a singer, because I don't really know her looks. But it was like a singer that was just like performing for him. He's like, see, I can do whatever I want. Just make a freeze. And I was like, okay. And now I have never in my life heard the term freeze, but I am adamant that this is a term that they use, a freeze. This is what it was called, a freeze, because I said it over and over again, and they said it over and over again. They can create freezes. It's like a mirage, okay? It's the only way I can describe it to you. A fucking freeze, okay? So how's that for terminology? So now I'm like really like, holy shit. Like this is like real. So like in the thing, I'm like taking notes. I'm like, holy shit. So I was like, well, what exactly is going on? And I have my notes in real life, because after this all happened, I pulled out my notepad and I wrote everything the fuck down. So I was like, well, like, you know, what do you want? Is like, what do you want? What do you want from me? Like, what do you want? What do you want to tell me? Like, I'm confused. Like, why is this happening? And I wrote down everything. Okay. So he was like, well, he's like, there's a lot that I want to like tell you, whatever. He's like, but I need to show you something first. So I basically almost like turned to the side and I'm like seeing into what essentially is almost like the future, but it's hard to describe. It's like I just saw into something else and he was like showing me something. And in it, it's my cousin and her mom and her friend. And they're all crying. And I was like, and we're in front of their house. I'm like, why is everyone crying? And they turn and they say our friend's brother's name. They say his name. And they're like, he's going to jail. He's going to go to jail. Like, he's going to go to jail. He's going to jail. And I was like, he's going to jail? And they're like, yeah, he's going to go to jail. What he's doing, he's going to go to jail. I was like, okay. And so I walk past them. I walk into the house. And as I walk into the house, my godmother is there. And my godmother has all these gifts. Okay, it's like Sailor Moon stuff. It's all stuff. And she's just throwing gifts at me. She's like, I need to give this to you. I was like, why? She's like, I need to give this to you before it's too late. I need to give this to you before it's too late. I need to give this to you before it's too late. I need to give this to you before it's too late. I got to give it to you now. If I don't give it to you, you'll never get it. I got to give it to you before it's too late. I'm like, what do you mean you got to give this to me before it's too late? And then I get pulled back into where my dad is. And then I see my godmother half appear. And so I was like it was like she was see-through. Almost like she was almost like a mirage. And I was like, wait a minute. I was like, are those two warnings? I was like, is she going to cross over soon? And I got a head nod. So now I'm like, oh, shit. I just got warned about someone potentially breaking the law and a death in my family. And I was like, oh, okay. Shit just got motherfucking real. Okay. All right. So I was like, okay. I'm like, okay. Okay. So now I'm like, literally just told that someone's going to die soon. Okay. Whatever. And so it's like, okay. I was like, well, I have to tell everyone that. And he was just like, quiet. And he was like, I was like, okay. So now I'm like shook, okay? Because in here I'm like thinking like, I have to be the bearer of this news again, which I don't mind. But I'm like, this isn't the first time, because if you guys remember, I was told that my dogs were going to die in a very similar fashion. And they did. I even got the exact timing. So I'm like a little bit shook that whatever. I'll go into it because I did talk to my mom afterwards. Anyways. So I'm like, okay, that aside, I was like, so like, what else is going on? I was like, what else is going on? And I was like, I was like, you're not alone here. And so he's like, yeah, I'm not. So he goes like this, and like, I see a bunch of people. It's like fucking crowded in there. I was like, wow, there's a lot of people in here. And it's like my living room, and there's a bunch of people. I'm like, wow. And so I go, wait a minute. I was like, so everyone here is dead? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, okay, I have a question. I'm like, sure. I was like, do you prefer it here, or did you prefer it on Earth? And it was a unanimous, we prefer it here. And I was like, really? Like, yeah, it's way better over here. I was like, so you wouldn't go back? They're like, no. Like, it's way better here. We can do whatever we want. It's way better here. And I was like, okay. And I was like, let me ask you something. I was like, where do you guys go after here? And they're like, we have no idea. And I turned to someone who was like an old woman who had to be like the oldest person in the room. And I was like, you don't know? And she goes, no, I have no idea. I've just been here this whole time. I have no idea where we go after this. And I was like, okay. And I was like, does that worry any of you? They're like, no. Like, they have it good over there. Okay, bitch. They making freezes and shit to do shit for them. Like, they're like chilling, okay? It's the spirit realm, bitch. They're like chilling. They're like, this is the spirit realm, girl. It's fun as hell over here. We don't care what happens after spirit realm. This is fun. And so I was like, okay. And so I was like, all right. And I'm like, okay. So I was like, so I turned to my dad. I was like, well, I don't recognize anyone in this room. And he points to the right. And I turned to the right, and my grandpa's there. My grandpa's just sitting in a chair with his cane like he always did. And I was like, oh. He's like, yeah, everyone's here. You just can't see him. And it was that point that I asked him, I was like, okay, so like, what do you have to tell me? And he's like, well, I can't say much. He's like, but I'm in charge. And I could tell that he was not as in charge as he thought he was. I was like, really? You're in charge? He's like, yeah. I was like, you think you're the Don? He's like, I kind of am. And my dad always acted like the Don. And I was like, I get the feeling that you're not as much in charge as you think. And he was like, no, I make the decisions for you. I make the decisions for you. I have final say in the decisions for you. I was like, no. I was like, I don't think so. He's like, yeah, I make the decisions for you. I oversee the decisions. I was like, okay, so you oversee the decisions. I was like, so tell me, what do you think about the past guys that I've talked to? And he goes, I've hated every single one of them. And I was like, really? He's like, yeah, I've hated all of them. I've hated every single guy you've ever talked to. They're all garbage. I was like, oh, okay. Work. Cool. And he was like, yeah, none of them are good enough for you. None of them are good. They're all trash. I don't like them. In fact, I don't like the guys you pick. And I was like, cool. And I told him, I was like, why don't you tell me who I'm going to be with or who's coming next? I was like, since you're so picky. And he was like, well, I mean, if I had my way, and I was like, well, I thought you were in charge. And it was at this point that I realized that my dad is the figurehead. Okay. They like to let my dad act. He's a Leo. They like to let my dad act like he's in charge, but he's not in charge. Not as much. Because I could tell that he wasn't able to make decisions that he wanted, and he wasn't happy about some of the decisions that are happening in my life. I was like, because I was asking him about my career and all this stuff, and he wouldn't answer. He's like, well, I mean... And it was very much like I would look around the room. Every time I asked a question about myself, it was like there was an elephant in the room. There was a huge elephant in the room. Everyone was tense and didn't want to say anything. And it was at this point that I realized that he was outranked, and I think that it was potentially someone who outranked everyone. It felt like a divine intervention, like maybe like an angel or something that was outranking everyone. Everyone is completely tight-lipped about my life. They're not allowed to talk about my life. No one was allowed to tell me anything, dude. Nothing. And I was like, okay. And so I was like, well, you got to give me something. And my dad was like, well, I just want you to know. And I wrote down the way he worded it because I had to challenge him on his wording. He's like, having more is not always better. And I was like, what do you mean more? He's like, a guy having more is not always better. And I was like, what does that mean? And I was like, are you talking about fame? And he's like, I was like, I think you're talking about fame. He's like, and I was like, but is someone coming soon? And my dad was like, yes. And I was like, so what's the problem? And he's like, just know that having more is not always better. He was basically warning me. So I was like, okay, so you're like warning me about this. And I was like, so it sounds like they're going to be famous or at least have notoriety. And he was like, just know that it's not all it's cracked up to be. And I was like, oh, I know, I'm more than prepared. And he's like, well, if I had my way, everything would be different. If I had my way, everything would be different. And I was like, what? So it was at this point that I realized that they 100% know the next person that I'm going to be with, and my dad is not happy because he lost. Whoever he was going up against in terms of picking someone for me, he lost. He completely lost. And this person is going to be very notorious. Like, they will have attention around them, whether it be fame or fortune. I don't know what it is, but they will, and he's not pleased about that. He also is not pleased about the fact that my directory is going to give me fame, because I asked the same thing about my career and he said the same words. And it was very much like, and I asked him, I was like, so it's coming soon, huh? I was like, and he just wouldn't say. He was like, if it's not my choice, it's not my choice. I was like, so it's around the corner, huh? And my dad was just like, just nodded. So not only did that confirm that something huge is going to happen for me soon in terms of notoriety, but I'm going to be with somebody who's very notorious, like have a lot of attention on them or fame or whatever, fortune. And I was like, you're not, he's so bitter about it. For some reason, he lost his, he lost whatever the fuck is going on over there. He lost, and he's pissed. My dad is pissed. He's so fucking pissed. He's so mad because he wants to have the say, and his choice was not chosen. It seemed to me like this is what I think happened. I think him and someone else in my family or someone else, whatever, and I talked to my mom and she has an idea. I think the two of them had had options. I really feel like the two of them sought out, a candidate for me, and they had to sell. It felt very much like him and someone else picked a candidate for me that they think I should date, and they had to sell them to like the angels or something, and he lost. For some reason, he fucking lost, and he was bitter about it, very bitter. And I was like, okay. I was like, well, if it's coming soon, I'm like, why haven't I seen it or felt anything? And he goes, well, lay down. And I was like, okay. And I wrote this down. And so I'm laying down, and all of a sudden, everyone in the room lifts their hands up, and they make these hearts, and then it's just a bunch of hearts that are they're pink and red hearts that just go flying into me. So they're all sending me hearts. It was sending me love, and all this heart love is going into me, and then it's filling me up, and I can't have anymore, and I'm just collecting them. And he goes, you can't waste those. And I was like, well, what do I do with these? And he goes, well, put it in your mouth, chew it, and swallow it. I was like, okay. So I'm chewing and swallowing on these things, and I'm they're stuck in my throat. He's like, you gotta swallow it. I was like, okay. It was almost like a pill. So it's I'm swallowing whatever. And he's like, all right, get up. And I was like, okay. And he goes, go over there. So I walk over through my living room, and I walk into what is almost like it's becomes outside. It's like my backyard almost like. And there's like a jungle gym. And there's someone on top of the jungle gym. And I realize that there's these like squiggly lines all up the ladder to this thing, and then the monkey bars. And they're like one is swinging on each monkey bar, almost like a video game. And it was the same thing. It was just like the hearts. And they're like, okay, you have to go up the ladder, collect them, and then go across the monkey bars and collect them. And I was like, okay, so I'm going up the ladder collecting them. And as I collect them, they go into me. And I get onto the top, and there's this guy there. And he's like, oh, wow, you're a lot more fit than I thought you would be. I was like, what? He's like, yeah, I'm here to help you get fit. You're a lot more fit than I thought you would be. Huh, you're pretty athletic. You're naturally athletic. I didn't think you'd be this athletic. He's like, I'm surprised you got up here so quickly. Because I had to like climb on these things. I was almost like climbing with like a rock climbing almost like thing. But like with these like, it's like those hoops that you have to put your feet in. And then you go to the next hoop and you have to like, it's almost like I was climbing a rope. Or like silk. And then he's like, all right, we'll go on to the monkey bars. So I was like, well, I was very athletic as a child. He's like, we'll go on the monkey bars. I'm like, oh, the monkey bars are my favorite. So I go right across the monkey bars. And he's like, wow, I'm impressed. You don't need as much as I thought you would need. And I was like, okay. So I jump down and I go back and I'm in my living room. And I'm like, okay. I was like, so like, what else? And then I started to hear mumbling. I started to hear whispering. And they're like, oh, we got to go now. I was like, what? Well, we don't have to go, but you do. And I was like, okay. Am I going to see you again? And they're like, yeah. I was like, well, when? They're like, really, really soon. I was like, really? They're like, yeah. I was like, so I'm going to be able to do this at will. They're like, yeah, you are. I was like, are you sure? And they're like, yeah, you're going to be here all the time. Get used to it. I was like, really? They're like, yeah, you're going to come right back. Like, in a couple of days soon. I was like, really? They're like, yeah, it should be. I was like, okay. So, I don't know if, like, I don't think it really means, like, a couple days, although maybe it does. I think it meant, like, because timing is different over there. The timing in the spirit world is a lot different than over here. So, I think in terms of, like, abilities, that was just them saying that I'm going to be able to, like, go in and out of that, basically saying I'm going to become a full-blown medium. And I was like, are you sure? And they're like, yes. I was like, okay. And they're like, so you're going to go now. Bye. And they basically like pushed me out. And so I get up and now it's real life. And so I'm writing down everything, and that's where all this is. And so I'm writing down everything. I tweeted what I tweeted, and then I texted Elle. And let me just see if I missed anything. The little girl, didn't like any of them. Wasn't the best option for love. He got mad at that. I told you guys that. He says that he oversees a lot of my decisions. I said I would hear back from him soon. Told you about my godmother. Told you about my friend's brother. Told you about my grandpa. Told you about the freeze. Told you he was worried about fame for me. And yeah, the monkey bars. So when I got up and then I thought about it, I realized I got everything I've been manifesting or asking for. The two biggest things that I've been manifesting have been mediumship abilities, clairaudience, and to get my body back in shape, to lose the weight that I've been feeling like I gained. And I realized that what I was given is exactly that. And the third thing is obviously love, because you guys know that, I've gotten a lot of readings on and stuff about love coming to me soon. And the two things that were given to me, well, three things. One, the mediumship ability, and then the hearts was the love. They gave me a bunch of love. And they gave me that like little like workout fitness thing, which is like helping with my body. So they helped me with two things. They gave me energy to help me with two things. So it's almost like Reiki. But they were very, 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 very adamant about things happening very soon. It was almost like they had to get this in to reassure me. Because last night I was very, like, frustrated. I was like, why don't I get anything? Why don't I see anything? Like, fuck, I haven't seen or heard anything in a long time. I got what I wished for. Thank you. I've been saying thank you all day. And I was like, holy shit. So now I'm like thinking of everything that's going on. I'm like, okay, like they're adamant that success is literally around the corner. Like I'm telling you guys, like they were talking like months. And when it came to love, months. Like I got the feeling that they're both happening at the same time. Like I'm going to get a relationship and success and career at the exact same time. I wonder if they're fucking tied together. I don't know. But they're telling me that it's very, very fucking soon. So I'm like, okay. So now I'm like, all right, well, I'm like, tweeting, and I was tweeting what I tweeted, and I texted Al whatever, and I was like, well, I'm gonna have to figure out how to tell my mom that someone in the family is dying soon. And so my mom texts me and she's like, oh, I'm gonna be late. I have a few things I need to do. And I was like, okay, well, I need to talk to you when you get home. So she calls me. I was like, no, I can't do this over the phone. She's like, is there anything bad? I'm like, just wait till you come home. She's like, okay. I was like, yeah, just wait till you come home. I gotta tell you when you come home. So she goes, does her errand, she comes home. And so I'm like, okay, so you need to sit down. She's like, what? I'm like, you need to sit down. Just sit down. So I tell her everything that's happening, and I tell her what I see about my godmother. And my mom's like, uh-oh. I was like, what? She's like, I got the chills. I was like, why? She's like, so I didn't say anything to anyone. She's like, but 2 to 3 days ago, I had a dream about your godmother, and she was dead. I was like, what? She's like, mm-hmm. She's like, I saw her, I was at her funeral, and I went over to her daughters, except for the one daughter that she's not talking to. And she's like, and that one daughter that she wasn't talking to, she's like, that's not, I felt like she didn't want to talk to me and she was isolating herself, so I didn't go over and say anything. I was like, okay. I was like, so that confirms it. Because I asked her, I was like, she's not been sick or anything. She's like, well, she was sick. She had shingles. And she's been, like, on and off sick for a very long time. But she's like, she's okay that I know of. And I was like, that you know of? And I was like, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm like, I'm pretty certain that she's going to be the catalyst for the family feud to end. I was like, her death is probably going to be the catalyst for this family feud to end. And my mom was like, yeah, I know. I was like, oh, so you got the same information that I did. Cool. Not that hard to tell you this then. And she's like, well, like, when do you think it'll be? And I was like, well, she was giving me Christmas gifts and she had to give me Christmas gifts quickly. I was like, so I don't know if that means that it's going to happen very, very soon, or if, this might be her last Christmas or whatever. I was like, but, they're preparing for her over there. They're fucking preparing for her over there. And my mom was like, she's like, I felt the same thing too with that dream. She's like, it's been bothering me for a few days now. I was like, well, there it is. And she's like, you've always had the gift. She's like, you've always had the gift. And she was telling me about how I was a kid. And she's like, it's funny that you're talking about a little girl. She's like, because you and your brother used to have friends that you talked about all the time that weren't real. She's like, you used to talk about, my brother had a name. I think her name was like Ava or something. And I used to always say, I'm playing with the little girl. I'm playing with the little girl. I'm playing with the little girl. She's like, I didn't think of anything at first. And then after a while, it was like, kind of freaked me out. She's like, I didn't really want to do anything with it. But she's like, it was very strange that you were playing with the little girl all the time. She's like, but I just let it go. And I'm like, well, I wonder if it's the same girl. She's like, it could be. She's like, it could be the same girl. And then I was telling her, I was like, well, like, I have to obviously figure out what the jail means about my friend's brother. She's like, yeah, you do. And then, so I had to figure out how to tell my cousin that. And then, I was telling her, we have to figure out, like, oh, she's like, well, we can't tell them. I was like, no, you can't tell her that she's going to die. I was like, because we don't even know if that's really 100% what it means. For all we know, it could be just a scare or something. I don't really, we're not 100% sure, and I don't want to scare anyone to death, literally. And so she's like, yeah. I was like, so it's just information to just keep and hold on to for right now. And, I was telling her about my dad, and she's like, oh, it's such your father. It's such your father. It's such your father. He would do all that. And so she's like getting annoyed, whatever. And she goes, but she's like, is it possible? She's like, because I think I know who's outranking him. I was like, who? She's like, my mother. So I don't know my grandmother. My mom lost her mother when she was 16. So I don't know my grandmother. I never met her. And my mom is like, you have the same personality just like her. She did whatever the fuck she wanted to do. I didn't care. Okay, she just went and did whatever she wanted and was unapologetic about it. So I'm apparently very much like my grandmother. Very much. Like, same exact personality. And my mom was like, I guarantee she's over there barking orders. And I guarantee that she always was. She's like, she was the matriarch. She always told everyone what to do. Everyone always listened to her. She's always in charge. She's in charge over there. She's probably telling him what to do, and he's probably pissed off about it. And I was like, I don't know, because it felt like something else outranked both of them. And she's like, no, no, she's telling him what to do. No, she's over there telling him what to do. I know her. She's telling her what to do. She's telling him what to do. Yeah, she's making all the decisions. I was like, well, how come I didn't see her? She's like, well, I don't know. I was like, maybe she doesn't want to show herself to me because, you and I don't have the best relationship. She's like, but that's not like her. She wasn't talking to her sister once, and she didn't give a fuck. She wasn't talking to her for a while. She had a baby, and she went over, pushed her sister out the way, and just grabbed the baby and was holding the baby. She doesn't give a shit. That's not her personality. I was like, well, I don't know, but I didn't see her. But in hindsight, remember when I told you where it sounded like he made a decision and he lost? I wouldn't be surprised if she picked one, he picked one, and they both presented them to an angel or the divine or something, and he lost. His choice was shit compared to hers, apparently. I don't know. All I know is my dad is not happy about the fame, about attention. He's not happy about the choice of the guy that I'm going to be with. He is not pleased. I don't think he hates the guy. I think he hates the fact that he lost. Because I think he feels like he had a better whatever. But at the same time, my trajectory has changed. I did think it was funny, though, that my dad told me that he's hated all the guys I've ever talked to or been with, and he's never approved of any of them, and he doesn't like what I go after. Like, my dad just fucking hated everything. It was really funny. And so, yeah, that's kind of basically where we're at. A freeze is something that I definitely am shocked to hear about. That little girl, we're going to have to figure out if we can maybe find her and see, who she is or where she came from. And yeah, apparently it's going to be a thing that, is going to get more. I'm going to see it more and be there more often. So obviously I'll let you guys know, but yeah, it's shocking. Like, even just looking at my notes, it's like, it was crazy. Like, and when I got up, I knew what happened. And like I said, in there, I know what was going on. And it was like astral projection, or I was in the spirit realm. Like, I can tell you I was in the spirit realm. The one time that I've ever had a similar experience, it was the same vibe, the same energy. If you guys have ever watched my I Was Attacked by a Demon story, it's highlighted on my channel. After I had the angels come and save me, I got full-blown mediumship abilities, and I looked around, and it was the exact same thing. That's how I know that this is real, because it was the exact same thing. The exact same thing. So, yeah. It was like a giant psychic level up it was like dipping my foot into mediumship abilities, and my dad literally said it's about time. So I think it was one of those things where, like I said, I think it's like they're like preparing me because it's about to fucking happen. Like, shit is about to happen for me, like, so quickly, that they were like making sure that I have a little bit extra to prepare, because I actually think the timeline got sped up. I'm almost positive my timeline just got sped the fuck up. And that's why they were like rushing to like send me the vibes and stuff that they sent me and give me the information. And I told you, everything there was an elephant in the room, and they wouldn't tell me specific things. They would not tell me anything that I really wanted to know. I had to like kind of context clue it out and pull it out of them. And it was very much like they were on strict orders to not tell me. So that's my story.